Hey there, I'm Sully and welcome to the Gun Club. Today's video is probably going to be a little bit of short and sweet and a little bit more to the point, but I'm going to try to go over a little bit about something I hear a lot when we have a firearms related incident or something goes on that's gun related, and inevitably we either hear from the media or someone out there in the anti-gun or anti-freedom lobby talking about how the NRA is bought and paid for all the politicians, or we can't get anything intelligent done politically because, well, there's NRA blood money all over the place. So let's look at the NRA lobby for a minute. Let's see what they actually do and if they actually do that much and how they compare to maybe some of the other lobbies. We're going to talk about it and find out, is it fact or fiction? Are the politicians all in the NRA's pocket? Have they bought off all the lawmakers? And that's why we can never pass sensible gun control or common sense gun control. And I've got a whole video that's coming out about common sense gun laws because, quite frankly, I'm not a big fan of common sense gun laws. When they have to put common sense in front of it, chances are it's not. We all kind of know that. So let's see. The NRA lobby, is it fact or fiction? How true is it that all the politicians are bought off by the NRA? Does the NRA have them all in their back pocket? Is the NRA somehow managing to sway all 435 members of Congress? Maybe, maybe not. Or, 435 of the House of Representatives and then 100 in the Senate. So they've got to be spending all kinds of money on this. Now, before we get too far into this, let's settle back with a nice, good cup of coffee. Hats off to our friends over at coffeebrandcoffee.com. Again, they've got amazing coffee, tea, and cocoa. They just put out a bunch of seasonal flavors. They've got a blueberry muffin. They've got a peppermint mocha. They've actually got a peppermint hot cocoa. They've got a new raspberry tea that came out. They've got coffee, organic teas, regular ground K-cups, all kinds of stuff. And as someone who watches this channel, you get quick 5% off with the discount code VALORSDS. So let's start looking at some of the lobbying here. Let's look at the real numbers. Now, in 2020, which was a presidential election year, we looked at the lobbying spending for, say, pharmaceutical or health products. They had $306 million in lobbying spending. Insurance as a whole, as an industry, $151 million in lobbying spending. Hospitals and nursing homes, over $108 million in lobbying spending. Health services, HMOs, $99 million in lobbying spending. So obviously, these are spending a pretty good amount of money on lobbying and quote-unquote buying politicians, as they like to say. So, where does the NRA stack up with all that? Do they spend more? Do they spend less? Let's look. For a presidential election year, and again, we know 2020 was kind of an interesting year, the NRA had $2.2 million in lobbying expenditures. These are real numbers. These are from statistical reports. This stuff is required to be reported in the Federal Election Commission, everything else. When I look at the lobbying spending of $2.2 million for the NRA as opposed to over $300 for pharmaceutical or big pharma, so to speak, I kind of wonder, how can we say that the NRA has all the politicians in their pockets? But let's look at another year, maybe one that's not a presidential election year. Maybe there was something weird going on in 2020, some kind of virus or something going on that all these organizations were spending this much money in lobbying federal people. So let's look at 2021. Pharmaceutical research organizations, and this was just research organizations, over $30 million. The American Medical Association, over $19 million in lobbying. Amazon, $19.32 million in lobbying. Meta, if you don't know, that's Facebook and Instagram's parent company. They own those two platforms. They spent over $20 million in lobbying. Now, when you figure that, we all know that the NRA is a gun rights lobbying organization. One of the things as NRA members, they pledge to stand up for our gun rights. So they make no secret about their lobbying. Does Meta, or Facebook, Instagram, do they let everybody know that they're a lobbying organization that spends $20 million a year? How about Blue Cross Blue Shield? $25.18 million in lobbying. Just that one insurance company. I wonder who writes the insurance laws. But wait a minute, maybe that's why we can't get decent health insurance reform. Maybe this has something to do with it. Who knows? Comcast. Now, Comcast is a media company. They own several different media organizations, and they've got over $13 million in lobbying expenditures. Now, this comes out of different TV organizations, things like that. Again, just this one company, $13 million in lobbying. Now, in 2021, how much did the NRA spend in lobbying? Well, how about $3.31 million? Now, when you look at that compared to the organizations above it, it kind of makes you wonder a little bit, where's the NRA big money that has all the politicians bought off? It's not. The NRA is not buying off all the politicians. I went back through several years of historical data, and I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I will say this. Since 1998, the NRA has only spent more than $4 million in a year twice. One was in 2017, they spent 5.12, and in 2018, they spent 5.08 million. Any other year prior to current, going back to 1998, they were under $4 million in total lobbying. So, again, while nobody denies that the NRA does participate in lobbying, no one's going to say they don't. But then again, they're very open about it. It's one of their pledges that they pledge to stand up for firearm owners and firearm rights. So again, from that standpoint, no one's going to say they're not a lobbying organization, but they are definitely not the be-all, end-all lobbying organization that they're portrayed as. And it's really kind of unfair to portray them as that. It's also unfair, honestly, to the politicians who stand up for our rights, who stand up for the Second Amendment, who support the Second Amendment, who support decent, legitimate firearms owners being allowed to own what they want, being allowed to safely shoot, participate in shooting sports, hunting sports, self-defense, self-protection. And yeah, it's not that we're buying the politicians off. Perhaps they've read the Second Amendment and they realize that firearm ownership is a right under the Constitution, and therefore that's why they're standing up for it. Not because they're dirty, not because they're bought off. Because if we're going to claim they're dirty and bought off, there's plenty of people who are spending a whole lot more money that are buying off politicians, and I think we've seen who it is. Alrighty, well, thank you very much. If you want more information about this or any of our other stuff, please check out our Facebook page, our locals page. We've got a bunch of information up here. Email me if you have a question or you want to see where I got my data. It's mike.southeastdefense@gmail.com. Also, check out our other videos. Thanks a lot, and y'all have a wonderful day.